In the financial report, you saw an item there of $300. The amount that we're paying is a fee for Ashton. Well, that's due to finish because the management committee decided, and quite rightly, that we would sell the stored equipment at Ashton and not continue paying out the money for the lease on Ashton, as we were not using the premises other than for storing equipment. So, talking about that, the sale and of equipment will happen on the 28th of June at Ashton between 1 and 3 p.m. So people who are interested and want to buy beekeeping equipment, that's an opportunity to come and buy. We intend to give you a listing by email in the next week or 10 days of what will be available for sale. We've got that already prepared, it's only just got to go out. So that's the sale of equipment, and if anybody wants to ask me any questions afterwards as to what may be available and things like that, I'm happy to answer those questions. Next slide. A website transfer. This is happening, and I think the due date for it to happen is the 20th of June.
It'll be good, yep.
That'll be good?
In between that, yeah.
Okay, so for us to do that, you people need to be kept aware of the process to register and log on. So we are changing over our website from Wild Apricot to Member Jungle. And the reason why we're changing is, again, we're going to save some money in doing that process. So all our committee asked for, bear with us. There will be some teething problems, but be prepared to let us know. Okay, next one. Yep, we've got two positions vacant. You're aware, as was announced a couple of months ago, our website administrator and our social media, 2 volunteer positions, and our website administrator, due to work commitments and business, she's spending a lot of time over in Perth and finding it difficult to maintain her role here. And then our social media manager was one who resigned a couple of months ago. So we're looking for 2 volunteers to fill those positions, and if we get too many volunteers, you might want to share the positions. So the reason why I did put my glasses on my head, I'm just going to give you a couple of comments about what we are looking for as duties or responsibilities for our website manager. The top one on the list, to ensure the website is up to date with the latest information about the Society's activities, events and industry news. Ensure the Society's governance documents, constitution, bylaws, policies, etc. are published and on the website. I'm not going to read it all. We go down to member communication. Facilities communication among members by posting committee updates, notices of meetings, agendas, update public notices about meetings and events. And the social media, the bottom one, create and upload content that promotes the Society's objects, including posts, graphics and short videos. Post content as required by the committee and ensure the content reflects the views of the Society and is approved by the committee as relevant. And there is the other part of that role. identify and manage our own or actual potential and perceived conflicts of interest related to website content. Sometimes we do get people going mad on the website, and the website manager is the person that sort of monitors those sort of incidents also. Next one, Simon. Do I know anything about that?
Up. Yeah, your turn. I don't know it, so.
Talk about ad-libbing.
Hello everyone. So now last calls for the national workshops. Who hasn't been to a workshop yet? Oh, that's actually quite nice. Just a few hands. So if you haven't, we don't have money. That's the last one open to all beekeepers. So it's in Camden Park, Saturday the 21st of June. It's 5 hours, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And of course there will be breaks. And we'll shut your lunch. Now, that said, Baroy is close. Well, I think we should start considering that it might even be here. The fact that we haven't identified it in South Australia doesn't not necessarily mean that it's not present. So these workshops will give you all the tools, the basic tools to understand what variety is, the biology, the impact on your colonies, symptoms, monitoring, surveillance techniques, integrated pest management. So it's a lot of information, and you need to know it. You need to learn all of this if you want to have a hives left after Varroa. So if you have any questions about it, I will be around until the end of the meeting. But this is the last one open to all beekeepers. Now we have another one later on in July on the 3rd for commercial beekeepers, or 50 more hives. But that's going to be, again, focused on commercial operations and is an advanced workshops which assumes that you have a solid knowledge about Varroa already. So if you have any questions, I'm sitting over there, just come and see me.
Thank you, David. Who's been to the workshops? Good. Can you endorse them?
Yes.
Good information?
Fantastic,
Good material that's handed out? Yeah, and a lot of the material that is handed out is very comprehensive and of benefit to you for the management of disease in general, as well as specifically for Varroa mite. So I too can recommend the workshops. The last comment I want to make, and they're not going to put up a slide for me here on this one, I just want to remind all members, remember we are going to have a July meeting, and at our July meeting we are going to move a motion to accept our new constitution. You've all had the opportunity of reading our constitution or seeing it and giving feedback, and we have had feedback on it. And the other thing that's going to happen between now and the end of June, you'll get a copy of our bylaws, our new bylaws. So you'll have something like 10 days to read our bylaws, or perhaps less, because the meeting's on the 7th of July, so you should get at least 10 days to be able to read our bylaws. And we are hoping that that motion will go through smoothly, and that's the reason why we've had the opportunity of getting feedback, giving you time to read as well. Any questions? Thank you, Trish. You got the important role.
Yeah, I have. I'm excited. Thank you, Bob.
Well, I don't really have to introduce our guest for tonight, who's sitting in the front here, but we're very, very fortunate to have Sophie with us. Sophie's a horticulturalist, an author and television and radio personality from Adelaide. She's a presenter on ABC's Gardening Australia. I don't know how you answer half those questions that people ring up about. She does very well. And an ABC radio talk host with extensive media experience. She writes for major newspapers and authors books on gardening. So we're very, very excited to have Sophie, and once she's finished her talk, she has invited us to do something else very special that I'll tell you about after she's finished. So would you please welcome Sophie to our meeting tonight?
It's really important that I have a clock that I can see, because otherwise I'll be here till 10 o'clock talking, and I know no one wants that. Well, it's fantastic to be here. Sorry, I am loud. And I'm going to talk tonight about my passion for gardening, really. I'm totally biased, but before I start talking, can I ask, who's heard me talk before? Who hasn't heard me talk before? Okay, some people haven't heard me talk before. I should preface it by saying I am totally biased, but I think that gardens and gardening is the solution to everything, right? And when it comes to gardens, I'm also going to include, nature's garden. And you could throw any world problem at me and I can solve it with gardening. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, well, probably 10 years ago now, I was invited to do a TED Talk. Now, who knows what a TED Talk is? Okay, so we used to have TED Talks at Adelaide Town Hall, 1,000 people. You give them 10 minutes to get your point across, and you're told that the audience isn't interested in your topic. They're busting to go to the loo because it's locked down while you're doing your 10-minute thing, and you've got to make it really precise. So anyway, this year the theme for the TED Talks was metamorphosis, and there were talks on cryptocurrency. I heard his talk several times beforehand. I heard his talk on the night. I've watched it again. I still don't get it, right? There were talks on inclusive education. Tara Brumfitt, the body image lady, she did a talk on that. And someone said, Sophie, we want you to be part of this. And, just because we think something, about nature or something would be good, what do you want to talk about? And I said, I want to talk about saving the world with gardening. And they went, what do you actually want to talk about? It's like, no, I actually want to talk about saving the world with gardening. The reality is that gardens and, gardening is a life skill that I actually think is really, really essential. And your beekeepers, and without beautiful flowers to support your bees, they wouldn't be happy. So I know that you connect with that too. So I'm going to run through... and this little sketch here, this was something I did for the Royal Show last year. So every year I'm invited by the Royal Show, the Royal Agricultural and Horticultural Society. By the way, we are the second oldest horticultural society in the world. The one in the UK is the oldest and we're the second. Each year I'm invited to do a display garden for them, a feature garden in the Goyder Pavilion. And I don't want to just do something that looks pretty, I want to do something that has a message. Because what I've worked out over the years is a lot of people that go to the show, I'm totally biased, but the show is a South Australian institution. Who does go to the show? Some of you probably compete with honey down there. But our show gets... between 450 and 500,000 people per year visit, which is the most per capita in Australia. Sydney Royal Show gets more visitors, but considering how big they are, we do really well. And what I noticed years ago, because I've been doing this for a long time, is that a lot of people that visit the show aren't gardeners, but they end up looking at all the garden displays and all the flowers. And what I worked out, if I can have a message that's simple, demonstrated in physical form, they actually can take it home with them, whether they realise it or not. Because many of them spend the show doing selfies. You know how it is, with the pretty thing in the background. So whether it's Buzz, the Bee Lover's Garden that I did a number of years ago, or whatever it is, if I can have a theme that they can take home with them, that's really important. So last year I was trying to think, I wanted to tie everything together, and I came up with this theme of Gardens Connect Us. So the first thing Gardens Connect Us to is nature. This is working well, thank you. Yeah. I didn't think about the fact I like presenter views, so I know what I'm talking about. And whether, if we look at the next slide, whether it's to the birds, bees or butterflies, it's really, really important that people connect with nature. Now, many years ago, I remember having a discussion with Chris Daniels. Now, Professor Chris Daniels is the head of the chair of Green Adelaide, a very inspirational man, and he said, "You do know, Sophie, not everyone wants a garden." And I'm like, "Yeah, they do." He goes, "No, not everyone wants a garden." I'm like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, some people want birds, or some people want bees, or some people want butterflies. And they will put in a garden because they love birds, okay? Not because they want a garden for a garden's sake." And actually, he's right. Over the years, I've met lots of people who actually aren't gardeners, but if they realise they can attract, birds, bees or butterflies into their garden, they'll plant things just for that. So it's really important. Now, we've got this thing now that we now recognise that as human beings, we need to interact with nature. A gentleman called Richard Louv came up with this thing called the biophilia hypothesis. Not good for a girl with this, but anyway. The biophilia hypothesis says that as human beings, we must interact with nature. And if we ignore this need, we actually have a need, like it's part of our DNA, to interact with nature. If we ignore that, basically there are dire physical, mental and emotional consequences. So we all need to interact with nature to support ourselves. And now, if you go to places like Japan or Korea, lots of technology addiction, they actually prescribe time in nature, right? So, you need to go to a park, you need to go to a national park. So it's actually a thing, and that's where the whole forest bathing came from. So we need to interact with nature, with many people, current company excluded, but many people just think they're too sexy. They don't need nature. I've got the Schmick house and the Schmick car and all this sort of thing, and I don't need nature. But actually, nature is in control. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that towards the end. The next slide, please. The other thing that gardens connect us to is cooler, greener backyards. Now, heat in Australia is the #1 natural killer of Australians. Did you know that? Heat's extraordinary, and it's often people think, it's heat waves. A little while ago I heard about a heat wave that happened in Europe, and unfortunately they didn't actually pick it up at the time, so this is probably 10-15 years ago, I've forgotten the exact date. But what often happens is certainly some people don't put on air conditioning because they're worried about paying for it, so they get dehydrated. Others don't drink enough water. As people age, they're not as aware of getting dehydrated. But one of the big reasons that heat is so dangerous is because medications should be kept in the fridge, and when they're not kept in the fridge, they're actually voided, or their efficacy is put in question. So, heat is this thing that's we really need to be mindful of. If we can go to the next slide, please. Here are two pictures of options in Adelaide. The one down the bottom is where I used to live. That's Mount Barker. That's Aston Hills. And I apologise if someone lives there, but if we look at that, we can see a lot of black roofs, right? Mount Barker is hotter than Adelaide. If it's 42 in Adelaide, it'll be 43 in Mount Barker, it'll be 45 in Murray Bridge. When we have all that dark colour and hot, hard surfaces, it gets hotter. Now, the picture on the left is at Croydon. That's a beautiful little garden called Churston. It's been in the open garden scheme. It faces west. I filmed out the front of that garden. It's on Rosetta Street, and I filmed a story about the Rosetta Street Greening Group on a 41-degree day. Now, let me tell you, you walk in that garden on a 41-degree day and the temperature's about 27 degrees. You walk in and you feel the temperature drop. Now, we have choices that we can make that will determine whether we've got a cool green house, or cool green garden around our house, which means we need to use less air conditioning, which is going to save us money, or whether we, have a wall-to-wall, hot, hard surfaces. Now, the urban heat island effect is something which is actually concerning governments around the world. In Germany, they're worried about the urban heat island effect. You know, all these different countries are worried about the urban heat island effect. Can I tell you, in South Australia, we need to be worried about the urban heat island effect. Why? Because as we have a lot of hard surfaces, they absorb heat and get hotter. Now, many councils in Adelaide actually let you look at the urban heat map. Has anyone ever looked at the urban heat map where they live? Can I ask? Go onto your council website and look at the urban heat map. Because most metropolitan councils will have it that you can look at your street and you can see the difference that having street trees makes versus not having street trees and all that sort of thing. So they measure temperatures during hot weather. Now, it's interesting to me that certain areas, like that one down the bottom, they're not doing urban heat mapping. Right? They might find things they don't want to know. So, yeah, no, I won't go down that path. So the reality is, you know, when people come to the Royal Show, many of them are not gardeners. I figure if I can show them, you know, okay, you've got a little space, what are your opportunities? I don't care how small your space is, even if that's the space you have to garden, we can still cool it down and green it up. And even if you're renting, you can do the same thing. So I'm passionate about creating more livable spaces because when you've got that green around you, you feel happier and healthier. Next slide. Now, brings me to health and well-being. I'm totally biased, but gardening has actually now been proven to help with our physical, mental and emotional health and well-being. So in terms of what gardening does for us, the first thing it gives us is exercise. Now, I've been doing a bit of earth moving today. I don't know that actually counts as gardening. So I'm feeling a few, you know, pools and places that shouldn't be there. But the reality is that they say you could swap a 30-minute gym workout for 45 minutes spent working in your garden. And you imagine that. If you can get out in the garden and do stuff, you've actually got your own 24/7 gym. And you don't have membership fees. And no looking good in lycra or activewear. Now the other really important thing about a garden, if we can go to the next slide, it's not only the physical activity, it's the actually being in a garden. Now gardens give us gardens can be a sanctuary in this fast-paced, crazy world. So many people experience stress. You know, like stress is part of life. But having a way or having a place to manage your stress is important. If stress is ongoing, whether it's through drought, whether it's through recovering from bushfire or flooding or things like that, when stress is ongoing and you haven't got a way to manage your stress, there will be physical, mental or emotional health problems. Now, the whole thing about being in a garden, you know, if you just picture yourself either in your garden or your favourite garden, you know, imagine yourself at the end of a tough day and now suddenly picture yourself in a beautiful garden. And then if you actually close your eyes and take a deep breath while you're visualising yourself in that garden, I can actually feel my heart rate slow down. It's really important we have a place to manage our stress. The sad fact is, a few years ago someone did a study of Australians and 51% of Australians use social media to manage their stress. Do you think that helps? I don't think so. I think that makes you more stressed, depressed, socially isolated, anxious, whatever it is. So not only does gardening give us exercise and it helps us to manage our stress, in terms of physical health, the benefits of gardening is enormous. If you go to hospital, you need to fight to be if you're going to be in hospital for more than one day, let's say, you need to be a cantankerous patient that fights for a room with a view. Why? Because if you have a room with a view, you've actually got a better prognosis. You've got a faster recovery rate. You'll have lower blood pressure. You'll need less pain medication if you have a room with a view. So things like that, you know, less pain medication is something they can actually prove. It's really, really important. And then the other thing leads me to my next slide. The last thing is that when we grow at least part of our own fruits and veggies, we get access and understanding about food security. Right? Now, I'm totally biased. If we look at the next photos, whether you have a big veggie patch, the one on the left was when I had a big veggie patch, or whether you've got a tiny little rental patch, growing at least part of your own fruits, veggies and herbs, gives you access to optimal nutrition. Now, you know, the baskets on the right were after 1 month in my rental patch. I've been renting since January 24, and 1 month after we set up the wicking beds there, I was able to harvest produce, you know, and it's not going to necessarily save me money, but giving me access to beautiful, nutrient-dense, flavoursome produce, even when you're renting, is really fabulous. Now, the next photo. So not everyone can grow everything that they want. If we can go to the next slide. There we are. So because a lot of people can't necessarily grow what they want at home, community gardens are another great option. And I work a lot in community gardens, and I love them. And one of the things I love is that sometimes councils don't get it. They think community gardens are about growing food, but they're about so much more than that. They're actually about growing connections, growing strong, healthy, resilient, connected communities. But that one on the left is the community garden at Pandana on Kangaroo Island, which was really important in the recovery from the bushfire. We were able to set it up and giving people a place to get their hands in the soil. Now, the other thing is, you know, another health benefit of gardening is that you do get your hands in the soil. And it's really important that you get your hands in the soil because good, healthy soil is good for you. There was a woman, a researcher in the UK that thought that cure to cancer lay in the soil. So she got a group of cancer patients and she exposed them to soil. And what she found out is the cure to cancer didn't lie in the soil, but they all felt happier. And what they've found out now is that exposure to soil, there's a mycobacterium in soil that when you're exposed to it triggers serotonin release in your brain. So it actually, you know, if you have your own garden or access to a garden, you can basically self-medicate, right? And you can't overdose. So, you know, when you think about people, if people are passionate gardeners, often they'll say something like, oh, it's been a tough week. I need to go home and get my hands dirty. Or I need to go home and get my hands in the soil. So that's actually scientifically proven now. And the other thing that I love is that on the right there, it's a grow-free cart. I don't know if you know about grow-free carts. They're a fantastic concept started by Andrew Barker in Strathalbyn, and that one's at Clayton Bay, you know, where people have excess and they just share it. If we can go to the next slide. Food security when life's turned upside down, say on Kangaroo Island, the western half of the island was burnt. People that had grown their own food, not that they even considered themselves gardeners, suddenly it's wiped out. And then we went into COVID. So then they couldn't even buy food. So they understand that, you know, food insecurity is quite scary. The photo on the right is a harvest exchange at the hut, just up the road here at top of McGill Road at Norton Summit. And I was there when that harvest exchange started. Harvest exchange is an interesting thing because sometimes people go, but I don't grow anything. Don't worry about it. Bring a cake. You know, bring a bunch of flowers. Bring something to share. Again, it's about the connections. And so that harvest exchange now I think is about 12 or 13 years old. It meets once a month and people share produce. There are a number of people there that don't grow anything, but they might make the guacamole dip or I can't remember what the other food treat there is always there, but it's a fantastic thing. The one on the left gives me goosebumps. That is on Kangaroo Island in a little area called Goss. Now that's in the shearing shed of a woman that's become an inspirational dear friend of mine called Margie Prideaux. They lost their home, they lost their garden, they lost their flock. Before the fire, she was about 80% self-sufficient. And she's rebuilt, and part of her drive now, once a month, the shearing shed didn't burn. That was the only thing on the property that didn't burn. So once a month, she has a harvest exchange in that shearing shed. And that's the produce from the people on the western end that were wiped out 5 years ago. And not only that, a number of them have gone, well, do you know what? We're going to be prepared for next time. So they are growing extra. So, instead of just being a household of 2, they're growing for 10. And they're sharing it, right? Totally inspirational because, a lack of food security was a huge wake-up call for them. So really amazing. Now my next slide, and it's about community. Here we are. So whether it's been part of the Beekeepers, Butterfly Conservation Society, BSSA, or a community garden. Now that photo on the left, that was a couple of years ago in Shepparton. Now I didn't know much about Shepparton, but I was doing flood recovery work here through the Murray River, and I got invited over to Shepparton. In that community garden, there are 50 languages spoken, right? Extraordinary. And I happened to be there and they put on a morning tea. I can tell you it was amazing. But anyway, the whole thing is that all these people from different backgrounds are brought together, and it's building strong, resilient, connected communities. Through that morning tea when I was there, they found out that they were communicating with all these different languages in English, thinking that people understood. And to some people in that photo, when you say a flood, they're thinking like a tsunami, right? They're thinking something that is rapid and you have to bash your way out a window to get out. And I had this conversation with this beautiful lady, and her and her husband had heard flood and had got in the car and tried to drive from Shepparton to Melbourne in the middle of the night, and it took them 14 hours because of the road blockages, and they were running for their lives. They didn't understand that our floods are not like that. Through a community garden, connections and support are incredible. Next photo, please. Now, that's an amazing lady on KI. When the western half burnt, many people from all over the island came to support people and build the Pandana Community Garden. And then this is on Rosetta Street. This was on that 41-degree day. I filmed there. That basically, a man called Mark Gauchi. Does anyone know Mark? In Adelaide, everyone knows each other. So you never know. So Mark Gauchi lives in Rosetta Street at Croydon. And he realised that he wanted to plant the footpath, the verge. Now, actually, we shouldn't call it a verge, we should call it a nature strip, like we used to. And if we all planted it out with local plants or plants that were flowering, we could create wildlife corridors. But anyway, he realised that he wanted to plant his nature strip. And across the road from him is the railway station, or the railway line. So he then started planting his nature strip, started talking to his neighbours. Would you like to plant your nature strip too? And then they worked on the railway line. Now they're in City of Charles Sturt, who are a really progressive council, who encourage and foster that. And now, what he started with Rosetta Street greening goes for kilometres along the railway line. Department of Transport love it because they no longer need to, deal with the weeds. And all sorts of things have happened. People walking along there to see the planting actually create more passive surveillance. So the whole area has become safer. Right? People often worry about security and safety. If you've got nature strips planted, you've actually got more passive surveillance and it's safer. Different groups have been inspired by what Mark started. Can I tell you the key? Mark puts on morning tea. Right? They meet once a month, and his dad makes this amazing morning tea. Right? And here we are, people that are volunteering, and they love it, and it's vibrant. And so if ever you're down that way around Croydon, or it actually goes from Ovingham and it goes all the way down, drive along there and look at the planting that's happened. Some of it's plants that have been purchased, others plants that people have propagated. But, bringing people together, and people that lived next to each other for years but didn't really know each other. We've got a lack of connection in cities. The photo that I presume Trisha got of me in the beginning, that was taken at Neighbour Day, and I'm really proud to be a Neighbour Day ambassador because in the old days everyone knew their neighbours, and now many people come in and out through roller doors and don't have those connections, and we need to know our neighbours not only locally, not only like-minded people we get on with, but we actually need to know our neighbours locally too. And then the last thing, next slide, is that gardens connect us to the earth. Now, the First Nation people were the first custodians and gardeners, really, and we're following in their footsteps. And this earth that we're on, it grounds us, it supports us, it feeds us. And last year, next photo please, last year I was driving down south in WA on my way somewhere, and I listened to a book, and I'll get the title wrong now, by David Attenborough, and it's called My Life on the Planet. I think that's the right title. Yeah, it's not. Anyway, so he's talking about in that book what he's seen happen on this earth in his lifetime. Now, can I tell you, on the way down there, I thought, what's the point, right? It's all too hard. It was like halfway through the book, it was totally needed. On the way back, right, he ends up sharing his optimism, right? And there were sort of 4 key areas that we can make a difference, right? And there were 2 things that I had been interested in. One is regenerative farming. I'm particularly interested in that. And I'm also interested in rewilding. And he talks about both of those as being, if we can move towards that. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but in Australia, a quarter of farmers are gardening organically, biodynamically, or regeneratively. Right? So that's a tipping point, which is fantastic. Anyway, so I'm thinking, okay, we'd sold Mount Barker. I didn't want to have all that thing around, and circumstances changed in my life. My twins, my youngest, were doing year 12 last year, so we had to rent, so I rented in Crayford's while I was looking, and I had this list on my cupboard of what I was looking for in my new project property. First thing is old stone cottage with old stone outbuildings, right? I wanted a property I could either demonstrate regenerative farming or rewilding on. I can't remember what else. It was meant to be an hour from Adelaide. But we've had a real estate boom, and what I realised is an hour from Adelaide was still quite expensive. And if I broadened my search, I had more options. So, if we can have the next slide. So, this is my new project property. And it is 18 acres in an arid climate. Now, I gardened in Ashton, right? High rainfall, close to cool temperate, really. Then I gardened at Mount Barker, Mediterranean-like climate. So this is arid/semi-arid, 18 acres. And you can see that it's cropping land all around me, and there's this little patch. Now, the story with this was once a farming land, and then a hobby farmer bought it and had horses. Now, the thing that happened is the horses left about 8 years ago, and the property started to rewild naturally. So while you can see all the brown, it's actually keener pod country, which is saltbush country. So it's mallee and saltbush. And so this is my next project property. If we have another photo there, you can see it's got a beautiful old stone home, lots of stone outbuildings. I'm hoping that by July, I'm actually running workshops up there. It's in the Mid-Murray region. So this is the eastern side of the Mount Lofty Ranges. So they are the Mount Lofty Ranges where they start to run out. I see sunsets over them every night that are breathtaking. And the sunrises out there are amazing too. the property was a mess, but all that stuff, when my son first went there, actually, he said, because I was away hosting a tour down the East Coast, very luxurious, and I sent my partner and son to look at it. And they ring up and they go, oh, it's a disaster. I kept saying to people, what I want is I want a property that scares other people off, because that's my only advantage. I don't scare easy. And so my partner and son are going, it's a disaster. And I'm going, sounds perfect, right? Anyway, and my son's going, you need to bulldoze all that stuff. I said, no, you don't. That's actually going to give protection to other stuff that comes, right? So that's going to give protection to other things I add. If I was trying to plant in that barren farmland, right, it would be really, really tricky. So, and then there's one more photo. She does have beautiful bones. I'm very excited. I have got 2 weeks left in my rental in Crafers, and then I'll be up there full time. And we're in the process of, trying to clean it up because it was a mess. Hadn't been lived in for 3.5 years. Deceased estate of a hoarder. Oh, yeah. But the thing I'm literally, I can hardly sleep because there's so much I want to do. I want to show that we can still garden and grow food, right? So one of those buildings, I thought, I don't need all those stone buildings to have roofs on. So I've taken the roof off one, so I've got a walled garden for my wicking beds, right? Because the biggest challenge out there is the wind. I want to have an orchard out there. You can still grow food. I mightn't be able to grow cherries, obviously, but, all sorts of things like that. Lots of buildings to harvest rainwater from. I will also say that I am connected to mains, so that makes it easy. I'm off-grid, so I've got no power cost. So, therefore, my expense will be water until we can get there. And I'm so excited. I should have put a picture up of them. These gums are not appropriate, right? They were planted back in the 70s, when we thought any gum tree would work. And now we know that in drier areas you need the right species. But there were these old gums. I've had a plant survey done. We've had a bird life survey done. We've had a bat species survey done. 7 species of microbats of the potential 10 in the area. And there were some old mallees out in the far corner, and you can see that they've died back and then started to regenerate. So they're dead up the top, and halfway up they've got new growth coming. And I didn't give them I didn't particularly value them when I saw them. And then the plant expert, a guy called Phil Barron, said, Sophie, I think these are pre-settlement, right? And originally the soil level would have been 50 to 60 centimetres higher than it is now. And that's why all the mallee bases are exposed, because of farming practices. All the soil is blown away and they're exposed. And they must, at some point, someone took the stock off or changed the practices around these trees, and they started to come back. They were dying and they started to come back. And when he was talking to me about these mallees, he talked about the habitat value of these old trees. And I'd already done a bat survey and found out that I had 5 species of bats, and just by moving the Anabat bat detector to where these old mallees were, I had 7 species. So I'm quite excited. So I figure I've got one more big audacious garden project in me, which is going to be to show that in dry areas we can still create gardens. This is an hour and a half from Adelaide. So I had my 1 hour circle, but we've made it slightly broader. It's a half an hour from the Barossa. It's a half an hour from the Murray River in a little place called Sedan. See, I'm still enjoying that response from people. I've been doing a lot of work with the flood-affected community of the Mid-Murray, from Blanchetown down to Wellington, really. And every time I come back from Blanchetown or Swan Reach through Sedan, I go through and go, gosh, look at those old buildings, aren't they beautiful? So anyway, now some of them are mine. So, Trish, do you want to come up and we'll
Yeah.
wrap up. So my plan is I'm going to plant a lot of tubes this winter. I've got 3,000 tubes ordered from the local land care, all different species. I sorted them the other day and I'm so excited by them. And we're going to monitor how biodiversity increases. Right? We're going to do an entomological survey to look at native bees and butterflies and everything like that. We're actually not going to do it till springtime though, about October. And then this will be the baseline, if you like. And what I want to show is that by adding more local indigenous plants and rewilding things, how quickly we can increase biodiversity. I am real. Out there you've got about a 20% survival rate if you plant tubes, unless you're prepared to water them. So I am going to go around with water tankers and water them. So I actually am having sort of a farm warming, which I invited some of the beekeepers to. But you have something else on that date, so I'm going to pass it on to Trish.
Okay. Thank you, Sophie. So Sophie and I have been communicating and we've come up with a date of the Saturday the 5th of July from 10 till 1 for any of us that would like to go up to her new farm in Sedan. I agree with what you said about Sedan. I've often been through and it looks a sleepy little place, but amazing buildings. So she has invited us to go up on Saturday the 5th of July from 10 till 1 to plant small tubes. So we would need to bring a spade, gloves and a watering can, a shared lunch, and she will provide it with us with some cake and coffee. Now, if you're interested in coming, there's a little sheet up the front here, so that we can write our names on here, and yes, then we will email you closer to the time. Just register your interest on there if you would like to come up, and yes, we'll contact you to confirm details. So after attending Sophie's patch for, how many years did we come up to Mount Barker? Long time. Yes, and a lot of our friends in here have been parts of those volunteers that came up to your place. I'm really excited about going up to Sedan to see your new place. So I'll leave this up the front, and if you're interested, please pop your name down. As Sophie said, she's only got one drive to go in and out, and you can't pass. So we would, we would have to make sure we all arrived at 10 and we all left at 1, but we could do some planting. She said there's lots of rocks and lots of bits of stuff, but it would be an amazing 3 hours, I think. I can't wait. So thank you, Sophie, and please, if you're interested, just pop your name down and we'll get on to it.
Thanks, Sophie.
I should have said that what we were doing with our farm warming is inviting people who are able to come and plant, and we were counting on 10 plants per person, right? So it's not a lot. The soil is easy digging, but out the back, because the soil is washed away, you're looking at the rocks that are subsoil. But it's a wild place. It's spectacular, but in an outback Australian sort of way. I am also I have quite a few things. I'm an organic gardener, so I'm not using herbicide. So one of the first things when I spoke to some revegetation organisations, you've got to spray out the weeds, right? It's like, no, I don't. And actually, the soil is really fragile. So if you spray out the weeds, it's just going to blow away. So better to have a weed holding it there and put other stuff in, which will eventually outcompete. So, I'm actually, I'm having sleepless nights because I can't work out how I've got enough hours in the day to do all the things I want to do. But we did invite the beekeepers, butterfly conservation, BSSA and all of that to come and see it. We're not planning on doing open gardens, just so you know. I will do workshops, smaller numbers, not the big things that we've done before. Done that. Tick that off the list. And Sedan is a gorgeous little community, but it's really dry. and I'm quite excited because if you think about all the gardens through, Persia, the Middle East, if you ever watch Monty Don's Paradise Gardens, right? It's all about creating a microclimate, and I'm madly putting in hedges and windbreaks to manage the wind. So anyway, now, Trish, do you want to come up? I forgot to say at the start of my talk that I always have goodies to give away, and are you happy to be my spotter?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so, I am totally biased, but I think gardens connect us to everything that's important in life, whether it's, birds, bees and butterflies, or whether it's our community. So, I have got all sorts of organic gardening goodies there. You don't need to have my water bottle. So, ranging from Go-Go Juice and Populate, which are basically microbes for soil. That's all about getting soil health going. We've got, what have we got there? Eco Amino Grow, which is vitamins for soil. I've got a couple of things of, no I haven't. I've got one thing of Eco Oil, which is if you have scale on a citrus or an indoor plant. Seaweed-based plant tonic, something for roses, organic herbicide, and eco fungicide and something for snails. So, I'm going to ask the question. You're going to put your hands up, and first person with their hand up and the correct answer, and they're not allowed to call out, are they?
No, they're not allowed to.
Okay, so who can remember what's one of the things that gardens connect us to?
Pam,
Health and well-being. Well done, Pam.
would you like me to bring you some?
Populate.
That one?
Well, why don't we keep it here, and we'll that's for Pam. Beautiful. Okay, so gardens connect us to health and well-being. What else do gardens connect us to?
Sandra? Community?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Come on up.
Up you come.
And what else? The earth. Young gentleman there.
Yeah.
Good on you. Come on up.
Come on up. What would you like to pick? What do you think, Mum and Dad?
I think that one would be fantastic.
Go-Go Juice with buns.
It's good for the soil. Okay. Seaweed-based plant tonic. Well, seriously, they give the seaweed-based plant tonics to racehorses to make them run faster. So, okay. So, we've had the earth, health and well-being, and community. What else do gardens connect us to?
I think Fabian?
Nature. Well done. And there's at least two more.
Okay. Aphrodite?
Food security.
So are you trying to get out? You took
Both of you can come up. I've got plenty of prizes. Okay. Food security. And there was one other thing. Really important in our hot hut. There.
I was going to say, it connects us back to ourselves.
It does connect. I'm going to come on up and get something, but there's one other thing I'm looking for. Really relevant. Cooling, absolutely. And I haven't got my basket up here, but I actually travel with an infrared thermometer, and I've already got a weather station up there. It's regularly 45, so I'm quite looking forward to that. It won't be in July, I can tell you. Beautiful. Okay, so, and...
One more question.
Ooh. What major landform is near my new property? And keep your hand down if you've already won something. Yeah, absolutely. It's on the eastern side of the Mount Lofty Ranges. Yes, well done. So on that note, I'm going to finish off. I am totally biased. I'm currently working on my next show garden, and we're doing sketches at the moment. They've just been approved, and it's going to be called Wild Thing. And because I think people of my age will remember that song, right? And they'll have it going around in their head for the rest of the day. But actually, Green Adelaide is promoting that we create cooler, greener, wilder gardens. And I figure, people don't actually know what that looks like. So I'm going to create a garden. So I get 10 by, is it 12 by 6 or 10 by 6 metres to create a garden. And I'm going to show how in a small space, two options actually. One option will be the hot, harsh, fake turf, yuccas, black, monument grey colour bond. About a third will be that. And 2/3 will be a little dreamy backyard with an outdoor bath and shower, right? It's all green and leafy and on the wild side. So, so watch this space. It won't be long and we'll be down there setting it up, I'm sure. I do have some brochures left from last year's Royal Show, so please grab one if you'd like. They're up here. So on that note, I'm done. I'm happy to answer questions if we've got time. No questions?
Sorry.
Thank you, Sophie.
Hello, Sophie. I'm very sorry. It's the first time I know about you. I hope it's not too late, but I do have a question. Because since I started beekeeping, I always want to know what kind of flowers or plants in general for every season that we can start sowing so that we can have relatively constant supply for our bees.
Great question.
It's a very good question.
So, basically, rather than sowing stuff all the time, right, I tend to like the base of the garden to be perennial, right, because it's less work. So if you just start with things like rosemary and French lavender, right, they're flowering from autumn till spring. So you've got 6 months of the year covered. And then in the warmer weather, now the reality is by midwinter the bees are inside by the fire. I don't need to tell you this, they don't want to be outside in the cold, neither do we. So, but by spring, so even if you just start with herbs, right, and you have all the different herbs that flower, that will get you through the warmer weather. And things like when certain plants finish, let's say brassicas. So if you grow Brussels sprouts or bok choy or cabbage or broccoli or whatever, at the end of the season, everyone's like pulling these plants out. Well, don't do that. Let some go to flower because the bees love brassicas in flower. They just, you'll see them in there, filling up their thighs with the brassica pollen. So, and the other thing is, so this is, I'm going to talk generally, so double flowers are not as good for insects as single flowers. If you can't see the centre of the flower, right, so even if you start with daisies and umbels, if you can't see the centre of the flower, neither can the insect get the benefit from it. So whether it's single daisies or single roses, I love single roses, and people think, oh, well, roses don't really do much for bees. I tell you what, if you've got a single rose, bees will be loving it. But a double rose, it's got no benefit. It's all bling and no buck, So, I think just starting with herbs and things that you can use in your garden if you've got limited space, and then also putting pretty flowers in. So I used to have hives at my previous property. But before I had the hives, I still had lots of bees. And I find it interesting doing talkback radio that people ring up, and it's always in springtime, about their pumpkins, right, or their zucchinis. Oh, I've got my plants in and they're flowering and they're not being pollinated. Where are the bees? And you say, well, did you plant anything for the bees? What do you mean plant something for the bees? The bees should just turn up and pollinate my veggies, right? Is really the attitude. And yet the thing is, if you've got your garden set up with stuff flowering all year round, right, your garden will be alive with bees. So, but don't go for the, often the new breeding is breeding double daisies, double this, double that. No benefit for insects. And so daisies are beloved by bees, any member of the daisy family, but also butterflies, all sorts of other beneficials love the daisies, and umbels, which is parsley, Queen Anne's lace. So not only do I want sunflowers, yeah, absolutely. So that will, see, sunflowers will do spring to autumn, but you've got to plant them all the time, right?
Is that enough?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And I also find when I used to get the plants for the society for the raffle, I would go to the nurseries and stand there and watch and see where the bees were landing. At the nurseries.
That's what I normally do. I go to Bunnings, I go find the bees.
Yeah, go find the bees.
When we're talking about sunflowers, I just want to share one thing. So I'm interested in the gardening, and I joined the garden group obviously on Facebook, and there was a lady, her name's Karen, she's up north, and she got a spectacular species of sunflower that has already been starting flowering since November and is still going, same plant, multiple heads. I got some seeds, I don't have many spare, I have a little tiny seedlings coming in, I can bring it next month. I don't know how their survival is going to go during the winter because I never tried to plant any sunflowers during winter, but if anyone wants to give it a go, I'm happy to bring it next week. I got some seedlings already popping out, so if anyone's like expert in gardening and wanted to give it a go, I'm happy to share some seedlings.
Lovely.
That's community, isn't it, Sophie?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jessie. That's wonderful. More questions for Sophie? Yes, Anne.
Hi Sophie. My friend and I were members of a craft group attached to a church. And we went outside and went, oh, good grief, it's all dead. There's nothing. So we've become the gardening elves.
Oh, I love it.
But the gardening elves are all in their 70s. So we need to attract younger people. So any suggestion? This is also an area where it's giving high density housing, no gardens, trees being knocked down. So I've applied for a Greening Adelaide grant. I'm going to apply for a community garden grant. This church has a food relief program and a very progressive minister. But we need to get younger people because we're getting blind. I like the morning tea idea, but any suggestions?
Let me grab that back.
So I have visited lots and lots of community gardens around, and the ones on church land are actually sort of my favourites. They seem to have the better longevity, right? Because the church has a vested interest in keeping them going. Other community gardens you can go to and they can wax and wane based on the particular coordinator that's the driver, and then they move interstate for the grandkids or something like that, and it doesn't happen. So morning tea is definitely a part of it. The other thing is when the community garden meets. Now, if you meet Monday to Friday, you know, you basically wiped out anyone that's working, or most people that are working. So it has to be on a weekend. But there are amazing community gardens, particularly, and I haven't asked, some of the most vibrant community gardens are in lower socio-economic areas, right? Because there's a lot of need, and whether it starts with a grow-free cut, I don't know how you get younger members. You've got to make it fun, you've got to put food on, you've got to make it accessible to them at the right time.
Yeah.
But about, I've lost track of time. 2 weeks ago I filmed for Gardening Australia, and I filmed a story about an organisation that started up, I think 2 years ago, called Fruit Share Adelaide. Has anyone heard of Fruit Share Adelaide?
Yes.
I interviewed him on radio. Basically, he just realised lots of people have a fruit tree in their backyard that they don't use the fruit on. They don't know what to do with it. Either it's something weird, or it's quinces, or it's pomegranates, or it's a kumquat, or something like that. And also, there are a whole lot of orchards that can't afford to pick fruit, right? And the fruit's just falling on the ground. So he started this program where there's about, I can't remember how many, let's say 100 volunteers, right? And they'll just put it out, we need to go here and pick, and some people can make it, some people can't. They get to take a bit of fruit home, right? So they've got to get, there's something in it for them, but they're also doing the right thing. And as part of that produce, either something obscure like it's not obscure, but kumquats, for example, which lots of people wouldn't know what to do with, the volunteers take it home and turn it into marmalade and then donate it to a food relief organisation. So they're supporting OzHarvest and Food Bank, as well as all the little community huts. Now we filmed, hubs I should say, we filmed at the hut, which is in Aldgate. Now Adelaide Hills, it's often had a bit of a toffee air, it wouldn't be what you'd think of as lower socio-economic. There are more people turning up and registering for the food pantry because families can't, the cost of living crisis is making it harder for people, and that's in an affluent area. Last year I went to a community garden at the back of a Jesuit monastery in Toorak, Melbourne. Toorak is very toffee. Can I tell you, the community garden produces a lot of produce. I think they were doing 30 bags of fresh greens a week, which was going out to the food pantry, because even though it's a toffee area, there's a lot of people in that area that are slipping through the cracks and can't afford fresh produce. So if you're doing something with produce, I think you're more likely to get young people that are interested in food security. If it's just about having a pretty garden, it is harder to get people involved, whereas lots of young people are interested in food security. But I will tell you that every organisation wants to know how to get more younger members. And yet other organisations I go to have lots of young members, so you've got a great mix here. Rare Fruit Society has a great mix of members. So morning tea helps though. Morning tea and something to share, that they go home, something in it for them, as well as learning skills. And there are lots of grants available. There's also, and I've probably got the title wrong, a community garden I know got an Ageing Well grant, because the community there was an ageing sort of retiree, and it's down on the Flurio, sort of a retiree village. And so, find out how, if you've got a good minister, there are lots of grants out there. Run programs on, not only growing food, but on cooking food. There was a program run for a number of years called Magic Harvest Program. Does anyone know about the Magic Harvest Program? It was inspired by a book Lola Hubain wrote, which was called One Magic Square, and it was about how to grow food in 1 square metre, basically. And it happened in lots of the lower socio-economic areas, and I went down to one in Onkaparinga, and what happened is they used to meet, I'm going to say weekly, and it was for people that had never grown food before, and they set them up with 1 square metre of veggies, and then they not only took them through how you grow it, but then how you cook it, because what do you do with a zucchini, right? For people that haven't had that first-hand knowledge of cooking or gardening. So there are lots of workshops that will bring people in that are interested.
Thank you.
Yes, I do Food Bank on a Tuesday at Mount Barker. It's the same. I think, no, there's no young ones, but I mean, it is a Tuesday morning, and yet the need in Mount Barker is just rising and rising. It's the clients, we're getting more clients every week than we ever have. So, yes, this food thing is so important. People with $10 to spend for the week, it's pretty awful. Any more questions? Oh, Barbara, have to go all the way to the back to see you.
Are you intending to have your garden so it is bee friendly? I presume you are. If so, what are you intending to plant?
Good questions tonight.
Absolutely.
Saltbush.
Great question, and I have already started planting the garden. As a matter of fact, 2/3 of the house garden is already planted, and the reason why is because I'm desperate to get something pretty, because it's pretty barren out there. So the reality is I've got a number of considerations. Now I'm an organic gardener, right? So everything's always going to be bee friendly. I'm also into flowers all year round. I want beneficial bugs as well as bees. You know, I'm looking for ladybirds, lacewings, hoverflies. I'm not going to have, at this stage, I'm saying I'm not going to have a managed hive on my property because I'm probably more interested with what I'm doing in the native bees. I'm planting lots of all sorts of native plants that will be suitable for native bees. So I think there's about 30 different types of native plants I'm planting, and so there's some it's a white gardenia. There's all sorts of things that are going to be suitable for native bees. But as well as that, around the house garden, I've got lavender, I've got rosemary. Can I tell you that the property, no one lived there for 3.5 years. There wasn't much alive. We took over in January. There were some olives. I reckon they would have actually died if I hadn't watered them, because there are a lot of olive orchards up that way that are actually, they look completely dead. So the things that hung in there were rosemary and French lavender, some of my favourites, and so they have had a dose of water. There is a beehive in one of the gum trees, which I'm delighted to see, and I know that there'll be lots of native bees there too. I've seen so many praying mantis, but because they're trying to fit in, they're all brown, no green. You think about it, because if something's, it's all brown out there, right? So if it was green, it would get picked off. We have got something like, I think we've got 16 species of native plants and 8 weeds that have been identified so far. I know there'll be more weeds come up with the rain. Now I can't remember the number of birds we've had identified too, but you know, that's really exciting. But seeing all the things that come back, and the reptiles, right? Lots and lots and lots of lizards, right? I think everyone was worried about the other reptiles, of which we've seen 2, right, in 6 months. And I don't know if they were more scared or we were more scared, but you know. But the shinglebacks everywhere, blue tongues and geckos and skinks everywhere. And one of the main plants that's there, so the one insect pest that is a problem up there is a little white rural snail. And I've seen how they manage that in farming communities. And one of the things they sometimes do is they will put, you know, obviously it's not a farm, so you can't burn stubble or anything like that, which some people do, but I do remember seeing 2 farmers driving with a chain between their tractors, and they come along, so during the heat the snails go to the top of the stubble, and then they come along with a chain and they flick the stubble, and the snails get flicked off, and then in trying to get back up to avoid the heat, they run out of slime and die. Right? So my fence posts when we took over were all white, and my plan was to walk down there, now it's 18 acres, with a broom and sweep them off on a 45-degree day. And it was 45, and I started walking down. When I had an aha moment. So, where the snails were worse is where there was no vegetation. Where the snails weren't that bad is where there was lots of vegetation. In other words, where there's vegetation, that's where the lizards are, and they're managing the snails. So all I've got to do is increase the vegetation, right? And then I recall this conversation I'd had with someone on York Peninsula years ago who didn't have a snail problem despite the fact his neighbours did. Why? Because he had done revegetation and had brought the lizards in. Lizards are amazing, but they don't like open ground because then they're totally vulnerable to birds of prey, of which I've got a lot. So actually, the fact that I've got this snail problem just means that I need to up my lizard numbers, and that'll manage it.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No, I think we're done, Sophie. So I have a little present here for you. It isn't wine. It's 2 bottles of our beautiful honey from Tonsley that we have down at Tonsley. We have our apiary run by Bob and a couple of other people, and we harvest our honey from there. And then one of those is a creamed honey, which Bob has done, and it's to die for. So thank you, Sophie. If we could thank Sophie for tonight. So I'll put her Connect brochures out here so that you can come and get those. And please, if you would like to come up to Sophie's place on the 5th, feel free to fill in our little form there. So really, it's 8 to 9. I think we might stop now. But, the raffle, sorry. All right. Sophie, would you be able to draw our raffle, please? Let's go to the back, please. It's just one big raffle today. We have a beautiful salvia that the bees love. Ollie, where are you? Oh, Ollie's gone home. We've got one of his bee hotels, his native bee hotels, and some... Oh, he's here again. Oh, thank you, Ollie, once again for providing us with the bee hotel. And we've got some... lovely products from one of our intermediate group. She makes natural products, so we'll just wait for Sophie to do that. All right, who's the lucky one tonight?
Okay. Shane C, U95.
Oh, well done, Shane. He's won the whole lot. Now, Shane borrowed the extractor from me. He's only the second person this summer who has borrowed the extractor, and I went, really? But he got 10 kilos from his bees, so they've been very good bees to him. So he's brought the extractor back tonight. But no, not much honey for any of us this year. Thank you, Sophie. So we'll just finish with a little quote. The hum of bees is the voice of the garden. You'd like that one, wouldn't you, Sophie? So we'll go home with that thought. The hum of bees is the voice of the garden. Please come and visit Sue and David over at the library if you would like to have a look. One of our members is going out of beekeeping, and he's donated a lot of his books. So we've got some new books in the library. We'll be having, I think next month we're having our videos to do an update on varroa mite. Is that right, David? You probably don't know, do you?
I will be in Sicily on Friday, so...
Oh, you'll be in Sicily on Friday.
Yeah, Josh will be here. Josh will be here.
Oh, good on you. That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
How long for?
A month.
A month?
Yeah, by Monday next week I'll be playing with Varroa over there.
Oh, you're playing with varroa over there. Have they got it?
Oh, yeah.
Have they got it under control?
No one really does, let's be honest with each other.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, they do to some extent.
Yeah.
They can manage it.
They're managing it.
It does cause chaos, so it's still an issue.
Right, so if you could please just stack your chairs against the wall. I think they say 6 chairs to a stack. Please feel free to go around, talk to each other, have a cup of tea, and get your bag of popcorn. Thank you.